For growth, but we have to be careful about how we do that. And so one thing, I pushed a major water conservation issue forward that I think will be a model for the rest of the state, probably for the country. And so it's really aggressive about, Kentucky bluegrass is great in Kentucky. It uses a lot of water, so we really, going forward, and I know this is going to sound dramatic, but the situation, actually, if you've been reading about the Colorado River Basin, and that it's over appropriated, and there's going to have to be tremendous cuts made in terms of, and 25% of our water for the city of Aurora comes from the Colorado River Basin. And so what I'm saying prospectively, no new golf courses unless otherwise approved. Front yards, no what we call cool weather turf. You got to be more native, drought-resistant vegetation. Same with the side yards. Same with the medians. Same with all new apartment buildings, office buildings. No grass for aesthetic purposes. Has to be functional. That it's there for a purpose, like it's athletic or picnic area or something like that. And so. So I'm excited about the fact that we just got it done, and so I think, and then that's the first phase of it. Then the second phase, we're going to look at all of our existing properties, parks, golf courses, everything, in terms of how to make them more water efficient, and then we're going to incentivize property owners to convert their landscaping. No ornamental water features going forward. That'd be done with. So. The next issue I'm working on, and then I'm going to get to homelessness real quick, is affordable housing. I really think that we have market-based solutions to affordable housing. I really think we need to look at the design standards. I mean, when my father was a career soldier, when we first moved here, 1964, when the earth was cooling, I was a kid, 9 years old, that we, family of 7, 5 kids, 2 adults, lived in a house well less than 1,000 square feet. That house is still there. I mean, when we look at Europe, when we look at Japan, when we look at other countries, I mean, micro apartments are the norm. Why not tiny home communities as a for sale product? I went to Oakwood Homes and they showed me how they're doing what they call modular homes. They're actually assembling them in a factory and then just like putting them together in large pieces on a small lot. The mountains are actually much more aggressive in terms of affordability because in some of the resort communities, people just can't afford to live there. So they're really relaxing their design requirements. And I'm going to go up and look at those. So everything's on the table. Everything's on the table. I love to get houses down to $250,000 range, and get rents down. Get condos are a little tough in Colorado because of what they call, I think, defects still is a problem. But I'm looking at the market-based sustainable solutions to affordable housing. Let me talk about the homeless situation. That is such a hard challenge, I think, for Aurora, for Denver, for the country. And so what I did, what was it? Mayor Hancock, and I really like working with him. And so he came up to me a couple times. He goes, let's work on this homeless situation. I said, well, I think for Aurora, and that's right when I got elected, so that would have been in end of 2019, early 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And I said, well, I think the issue for Aurora is youth violence prevention. I think, and so we worked together on that. And then he said, and I said, not homelessness. And then he kept it up, and so then I finally thought, well, okay, I'll do it. And this was like, I think it was in December of 2020. I said, okay, so I'll do it. And then, but somehow I got in my mind, and I think he's never forgiven me for never having told this, that why don't I find out what it is to be homeless in Aurora and Denver? Why don't I do it for a week? It's like around Christmas time, so people are taking vacations, and it's the height of the pandemic. So if you're in a shelter, you have to wear a mask anyway. So it was easy like to disguise myself because of that. And so I hit the ground for like a week being homeless. Stayed in, I meant to stay in an encampment in Aurora for my first night. And so I started in Denver, walked all the way into Aurora, and it was like dark, in December, and it was gone. And the city had just abated it, so I should have checked before I went there. So I spent my first night sleeping in a parking garage at the Anschutz Medical Campus, and then used their Aurora shelter in the next day and stuff like that. Although it's kind of funny when I look back on it. So I never thought you got to like check in and they ask you a lot of questions. And so I'm the mayor of Aurora and in my own shelter, checking in. And so this really nice person goes, well, what's your name? And I said, Harold Coffman. Oh, and she said, okay. And then I just like totally caught me off guard. She goes, and what's your social security number? And I gave her my social security number, and then, the real one. And then she goes, well, I'm trying to remember maybe like date of birth or something like that. And so, but the fact that I gave her like my wrong name, but the right social security number and the right like birthday, like she goes, boy, there's alarms going off all the way in this computer. She let me in. But so what I found was this, and I stayed in shelters were not the tough part. Encampments were staying in an encampment in downtown Denver, that was hard. Shelters were not hard. And so, but I walked away with this, that there were three classes of people in the shelters. And I think the first class was not as large, not as large as I thought it would be, but people that were truly mentally ill, not drugs, not alcohol, just mentally ill. And it's amazing that they can even navigate the process to get assistance, but they did that. And that's a very tough population to deal with because you cannot force it. I mean, it's a very high bar, given our civil liberties standards, case law, constitutional case law, to force them into treatment. You look at somebody that's schizophrenic and you think, okay, there are things that they could take to help stabilize them, but if they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. So they have to be really a significant harm to themselves or to someone else to be able to force them into a hold situation, 72-hour hold situation. So the big, what I call the big middle in the shelters were people that had drug and alcohol, long, chronically homeless, drug and alcohol challenges, more alcohol than drug, more older than in the encampments on the street, and really very few had a desire to move on. I mean, they kind of hooked into a lifestyle. And then the bottom tier were people that were really resilient, were people that were economic casualties, mostly because of the pandemic, that a lot of people were displaced during the pandemic, particularly when public health officials said, besides the number of jobs, businesses to close down, but there were a lot of independent contractors, people that clean houses for a living, a lot of immigrants, where public health officials said, don't have non-family members in your home. It just displaced a lot of people that did interior painting in the winter, people that clean houses, lots of people were displaced. And so they were utilizing the shelters just to wait out the pandemic, but oftentimes working during they'd find jobs during the day and then sleep in the shelter at night until they could save up enough money to get back there and get their own place. But they had a path out. I felt like they were resilient and had a path out. And so they just needed that helping hand. The encampments were tough. Encampments were very different. Encampments were young. At that time it was meth. I think now it might be more meth and fentanyl, but very, very challenging with young people that just didn't want to move on. I was talking to somebody from the Denver Rescue Mission the other day about how much he thought housing costs contributed to this, and he said he thought it was a significant thing. See, I think that once on the encampment side, once somebody falls into that, so housing costs could rents and things like that can be a contributing factor, and then once somebody falls into that, it's really hard to get out. I think that they develop they don't have ties with their family members anymore. They establish bonds on the street, so it's very difficult. Let me tell you what Aurora is doing, because I think we've got some great things going on. We just got a bunch of these pallet homes in, and pallet homes are those small, almost like shed-like things, but they have electricity, they have HVAC, they don't have running water. We have other facilities for that. We've got 2 locations, one up the Salvation Army around 32nd, I think, in Peoria. Another one by a church has donated land for us to use. Heritage Christian Center. No, not here. It's It's at 6 and Chambers. It's in the vicinity of 6 and Chambers, and we also have safe parking spaces. So we have a day resource center. We have Comitas Crisis Center, which also has beds. So we are working with the state right now on a large facility to help people with chronic drug and alcohol problems. And that is a difficult long-term path to treatment. But there's a facility called, I think it's called Ridgeview Academy, and it was run by the Division of Youth Services out on Quincy Road, and it was a 500-bed facility. Now those were 2 double bunk rooms, and so probably when we get all said and done for adults, it'd be about 150 bed facility. But it's got food services there, it's got classrooms there, it's got a gym, it's got vocational training, everything you can imagine. So we'll do that with the state. Then we're looking at closing our existing facilities on the Andrews Medical Campus, moving out to the vicinity of about Smith Road and Chambers, and creating a campus there. People that emergency housing part, then a second part for people participating in programs, whether it's mental health, drug treatment, or it's job training, and then the third, transitional housing for those people working jobs that are in a transitional phase. So I think we're doing the best we can. I think the camping ban has made a difference. That it's not a cure-all at all, and we have beds for the people that are being in their encampments are being invaded. Not very many take advantage of it. We have tons of services available for people. Unfortunately, people on the street, not many taking advantage of. We hope that changes, but that's the way it is right now. So it's just a tough issue but there's a shelter population again in the encampment population. Encampment population is tougher to deal with. So if anybody has any questions on anything, I'd be happy to answer them. Yeah.
Is there any kind of an effort to lobby our good friends on the left that maybe we should not have decriminalized things like fentanyl?
Yeah.
I feel like that is one of the biggest issues. You can't have compassion for somebody when you're making it perfectly legal for them to live in that awful state of abject addiction.
I think that so many of the problems we have criminal justice-wise are because over the last 10 years, fentanyl is one of them, felony to a misdemeanor, and I think that they did it to a felony, but then you had to have, I can't remember what the dosage requirements are, but there's no way to test for that. They can test that there's fentanyl in a pill, but to test for how much, we just don't have that ability right now. But there's been so many crimes, penalties that have been lowered with a philosophy that we're better off to depopulate our jails. But when you have a career criminal, let me tell you, I do the math. Every day they're behind bars, they're not raping somebody, they're not killing somebody, they're not robbing somebody. For first-time offenders, absolutely, or nonviolent offenders, we should do everything we can to to give them diversion programs short of sending them to jail. But there are people that do belong in jail. And so fentanyl is just, I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, I'm shocked at the number of people that are dying from fentanyl. So it's very tragic, but lowering that has been problematic. Yeah.
How many police are the city of Aurora short on?
I think we're short about 40 right now, but that probably, the reality, the problem is more severe than that because we have, I was just at a police graduation, I think it was yesterday, day before yesterday. And, you know, when they graduate, they don't just go on the street. Then there's what we call an FTO program, field training program, where they have to be with another officer in almost, you know, in a training scenario, so they're not really out there. So the aggregate problem is a little bit less. I mean, it's less than that. We are doing everything we can to recruit nationally, particularly for lateral transfers, to come into the department. We've really upped the pay. And so when we look at whether New York City or Atlanta, I mean, we pay a lot more than they do.
Can you hire in at Denver?
What's that?
Higher wage.
Denver's pretty good too. Denver's pretty good too in terms of pay and benefits. What the good news is we're not losing any more to Denver. But yeah, we've got to make up that difference. I think the new chief has done some incredible things, and one of them is he reinstated what's called the. So what we've been doing, so you got patrol that goes out, and that's been a priority. So we've gutted other programs for patrol, but they're out there, and so yeah, if they see a crime in progress, they'll react to it. But usually they're responding to dispatch calls, and so now he's got a team out there, especially trained, in addition to patrol, that's just looking for warrants. It's just looking for habitual auto thieves, looking for violent criminals to get them off. And so the sole focus is not to answer dispatch calls, but to get those people off the street that are known problems.
Any headway being done to getting rid of the panhandlers and just about every street corner?
Yeah, so it's really frustrating when you have, right now by Department of Labor, it's almost 2 jobs for every 1 person looking for a job. And we've got these people on the street corners, many of which are not homeless. And so we're going to have, there's constitutional case law that limits our ability, but some of it is just a safety issue. I mean, I've seen them like walk just practically down in traffic. But so one of the things we're doing is a signage program that says, please don't, on these intersections say, please give to nonprofits that will help the homeless as opposed to giving directly to the homeless. And so we hope that makes a difference. But yeah, it is really frustrating. And the amount of property crime that's involved in some of these encampments. Not only do they, property crime where they vandalize and break into businesses, but they also prey on each other in terms of crime. And so it is just very problematic. I was just there was a business that called me right across the street from the municipal building on Chambers and Alameda. And it was there was like a donut shop, monogram shop, just a bunch of 10 stores in this one little strip. And a homeless group of people started a fire behind the building. And it caught on the electrical system, and it put out the electrical for the entire. I'm disappointed that the owner hasn't fixed it yet, but there's a cost of all this. Any other questions? Yeah.
What relationship does the city currently have with the Colorado Oil and Gas Commission, and how does that relate to the new city council's approach to the extraction of oil and gas in the city of Aurora?
So what happened is, I think before I got on council, before I was elected mayor, there was called an operator's agreement was negotiated between the city and the operators at that time that basically defines all their regulatory requirements. And so we have our job, what the jurisdiction that we have as a city is to regulate the surface of oil and gas. But below surface is the state GOCC, I'm trying to remember, Colorado Oil and Gas Commission, Conservation Commission. So they're regulated, below ground regulated by the state, surface regulated by us. And so there is, I mean, Aurora's annexed so far northeast and east that we're in the Niobrara. So oil and gas is an issue. Anything else? Oh.
Mayor, I have a political question.
Sure.
Whenever we think about amazing candidates, your name is always the first one to come up because of how you get out there and you're everywhere and you're talking to so many people. What advice would you have for candidates, especially in the Arapahoe County area, to make a difference because it's so close? All the races are so close, and I know we're Democrat dominant in Aurora. What kind of advice would you give?
You know, I think really appreciate the diversity of the city. You know, obviously diversity in sexual orientation, diversity in ethnicity, culture, language. You know, it's in religion. You know, so I kind of do it all. And so, I mean, I think I've got a Sikh event tomorrow. I know they're going to put a turban on me. God bless them. And I've got, I go to the mosque sometimes for prayers. I go to different Christian churches. I've always working on, Spanish is very important in this community. We are 1 out of 5 Aurora residents is foreign born. The largest immigrant community is of Mexican descent. Second largest is Ethiopian. Third is El Salvador. And fourth is Korean. And so I do on Monday mornings I'm on talk radio, Spanish language talk radio. I don't take callers. And 2 words you don't want to mix up in Spanish. Orgullo, pride, orgía, orgy, done that. But I think the fact that they just so fall over themselves when they see me, the fact that I've improved over time, the fact that I try, is such a, it's just a sign of respect for the community, which is so important for that community, especially as a Republican. So they need to hear it. I mean, I think that they have so many things, we have so many things in common with them, but they just think, you know, Republicans don't like immigrants. And that's certainly not the case. Yeah.
So if someone reached out to your office, could you give us a lowdown on the places where the Koreans and the Ethiopians and the El Salvadorians hang out, or
Sure.
how to get a hold of them?
Well, I think that there are different areas of the city that kind of, I think Havana is a great corridor for diversity.
Okay.
Havana, there are Ethiopian restaurants in Havana. There are Korean restaurants in Havana. There are incredible Salvadorian, Mexican restaurants. I think probably that corridor has the most incredible ethnic restaurants. And let me tell you, we don't have maybe the 5-star restaurants around. Denver does, but what we have is just the most incredible ethnic food in the city of Aurora. Just unbelievable. Yeah. So, but I would say that corridor is just unbelievable. Anything else?
Hey, Mike,
Yeah.
you want to talk just a minute about your history when you were a congressman? I mean, you did get our national endorsement when you ran several times, and just talk about the history there so some people might not know about that.
Oh yeah, thank you. I can't remember the. There was a certain act before Congress to sign on to, and I can't remember the specific name of it, but it was essentially really, I'd say, memorializing the rights of the LGBT community, trans community, and so I supported that, and so I was honored to have the support of the gay community.
Our national organization endorsed you several times.
Thank you. Thank you.
When you were congressman.
Very
Just
kind.
wanted to give everybody that history.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Well, great. Well, I just really, it's an honor to be here. Thank you for all you do in our community, and politically, thank you for all you do. But thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Such an exciting city. Thank you.